Hi, I'm Brittney Ashley, your host of Breaking Norms, Building Dreams, your guide through this transformative journey in both business and life. This is your place crafted for dreamers, doers, or anyone who has been told they can't. Get ready as we challenge those narratives together. You're tuning in live to the United Public Radio Network, airing on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. We are streaming on all the popular platforms every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join me for a candid and thought-provoking conversation celebrating your unique journey because you are worth it. Okay, everyone. So multitasking here today because technical issues. Why I quickly filmed and shared my screen so you'll have an introduction. But hello, Happy New Year, everyone. We are back with Breaking Norms, Building Dreams. I'm your host, Brittney Ashley, and we are broadcasting live today on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 and 107.7 in New Orleans. So I'm so excited to be back in 2026. I know I kind of took off a little bit there. I'm excited to have my first Monday back with Anne. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited to have you today. I'm pretty excited for our conversation. That's something I know I've been such a strong advocate for my kiddos, myself. And so I'm really excited to dig in today. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little thrown off from tech issues. I have my process. We'll just do a little introduction with you. Just let me make sure. Just let me double check things that hopefully everyone can hear me okay on live. But I'll do a little short introduction with you, Anne, and then you can kind of dig in a little bit more. And then we have all our questions that you've seen prior. But it's a very open conversation. So anything that you want to share, please share with us. So everyone, please welcome Dr. Anne is a national award-winning researcher and co-founder of TRICOAST Education, where she creates equitable approaches to children's language assessments and learning support. She developed a curriculum-based dynamic assessment, which is abbreviated as CBDA, during her PhD, focusing on cultural responsive and strengths-based methods, and bridges research and practice through professional development, training, and #1 Amazon best-selling children's book to raise awareness of development language disorder, and then bracket DLD. She has presented international to education's clinics and currently completing a postdoctorate fellowship at how do you say this name?
Concordia University.
Thank you. Continuing to advance inclusive education. I'm so excited to have you.
So much. It was a great introduction.
I shortened it a little bit because I know you gave me a bigger one, but I use those for social media for us. And then I try to break it down further when we do our quick introduction, but then I always leave it to you to kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, no, exactly. I kind of gave you the long version to say, you can cut back as much as you want. I just kind of wanted to give you the information, but yeah, you kind of covered it. I'm currently completing my postdoc at Concordia, and it's kind of where I did my PhD as well. And it's really awesome because my PhD, I get to bridge that entrepreneurship aspect of TRICOAST Education. So it's super, super excited. So yes, we can dive in the origin of the CBDA. We can start anywhere, really.
We can go all over. We have a long list of questions. So I know, and we have an hour today. So I'm excited to dive in. Maybe we can kind of go back and you can tell us a little bit of who you are and how you began your journey.
Absolutely. So I'm from New Brunswick, so the east coast of Canada. And I would say my journey really started in my master's. I did my my undergrad in sociology and psychology, so I've always really been interested in people and relationships to people. And my parents are both educators, so we always had that education background, I would say. But it was in my master's when I had the wonderful opportunity to work with Indigenous communities across Canada. So from Alberta all the way to Labrador in Eastern Canada. And it was my job to go to these communities and assess the children's literacy and language skills.
Mhm.
And, I was about 23, 24 at the
Oh,
time,
wow.
and it was such an amazing opportunity. It's kind of an opportunity that very few people get to do. And so I was all wide-eyed and all ears. I was so excited to learn and to learn from these community members and the children alike. And the children were absolutely wonderful. But when it got time to actually assess them, we use what we call standardized normative assessments, which basically means that these assessments have been used on many, many, many children. And they're used to identify what the children know and what the children do not know, and where do they fall in terms of whether they're typically developing, or maybe there's like dyslexia or language disorder or something like that. So that's why we want to assess the children's literacy and language. And when I was using these assessments, I realized that quickly how biased these assessments were. So I'll give you an example. So one of them, it was a vocabulary task. So you have pictures, and basically the child just has to say what's on the picture, but there's only one right answer. And so you take a child who's in a very, very remote Indigenous community, they might have a different vocabulary word, even if it's English for that word. So they would use that, for example, sturgeon instead of fish. But sturgeon is a type of fish, but fish is the correct answer. So the children would all say sturgeon.
Yeah.
Correct. But we had to mark it wrong because according to the test, we had to follow the rules. And so when you add those few instances together, their abilities and their lived experiences and their knowledges were not truly reflected in these assessments. And when, like I said, I was doing this, I was like, I feel like the children could have done better. But I kind of kept that to myself. And then, I'd have school personnel, I'd have teachers, resource teachers, speech linguist pathologists, classroom teachers come up to me and say, Anne, can you develop a culturally sensitive language assessment? Like I said, I was 23 at the time. Yeah. I was like, I have no idea what that means. But I was like, what's your concern? And basically they articulated exactly what I was feeling. It's like, we know that these assessments are not validated for our students, but it's all we have. And when those assessments are used on our entire school, we get about 75 to 80% of them labeled as having a language disorder, what we now call developmental language disorder, or DLD. So in reality, it's 7.5%, not 75. So that is huge. So you think of all the financial resources that the school has to put in for that extra intervention, or the human resources. They have to hire more people for this intervention, or the classroom teachers who have to deal with various needs. But in fact, it's not because they have a language disorder. It's just they have different lived experiences and cultural norms that are just not reflected in the assessments.
Yeah.
And that kept popping up, community after community after community, whether they were Cree, Dene, Ojibwe, Wolastoqey, it was everywhere. And I was like, okay, I think there's a need here. If, these communities don't even know each other and it's the same issue that's coming up. And in conjunction, I was also working in the public school system as an educational assistant in 2016. So in New Brunswick, we had our first wave of Syrian refugees. Now, if anyone knows New Brunswick, it's quite a not a very diverse province. Diversity means you're French. So when we first had a first wave of Syrian refugees, the schools, they were scrambling. What do we do to really support these children who are coming to school not knowing French or English? So I was working with some of these students, and some were high flyers. They picked up the language so quickly. They had no problem, but some of them were struggling. And I said, well, what are we going to do with these? They're frustrated. You're trying to teach them. You're like, there's a barrier to their learning. Like, what's going on? And I would give this concern, and they would say, well, we have to wait and see. I was like, that did not sit well with me. I was like, I'm not going to wait till these poor children fail across the board and then act. So I was like, okay, so it looks like the Indigenous communities were being over-identified with developmental language disorder, while in the public school system, they weren't using those assessments because they know they're not validated for them. So they just do the wait and see approach. So they're under-identified. And so you get, anyone who doesn't really speak English only as a language, that's a big population. That's a lot of people. Those assessments are not truly validated for them. So that's what really motivated me to do my PhD. So I went to Concordia in Montreal under the supervision of Dr. Diane Pesco, and she's wonderful speech language pathologist. And she worked a lot with Indigenous communities as well, and with assessments. So it was a perfect fit. And it was her that she kind of put it in my mind, why don't you look at a dynamic assessment? And I had never heard of that. So I start reading about it and I said, my gosh, the answer is here. The answer is in research. It's dynamic assessment. It's not those standardized assessments that I was talking about. It's dynamic, which means that you don't really look at what the child can do versus can't do. You're looking at their potential to learn. And that's a completely different approach around assessment. And so I was thinking, my gosh, like, why isn't this everywhere? Why isn't, how come this is really only in research? And there was a few limitations as to why. So I said, if I can turn around and take those limitations, it takes longer to assess. Learning potential, what the heck is that? And how do you measure learning potential? It's such an abstract concept. So I try to make it as objective as possible. I try to make it as easy to really work with the child to identify their potential. And so all these things, I try to make it as easy as possible. And then I tested it. I want to see, hey, did it work? And it did. It was able to distinguish children who were typically developing in language versus the ones who actually did have DLD. So that's kind of where the origin of the curriculum-based dynamic assessment, or the CBDA, came from.
Amazing. How did you always think that that's kind of like the journey that you wanted to kind of go along? Because it sounds like you kind of did like assistant work at school, but then you kind of saw the gaps in between and followed this journey.
Yeah. If you were to ask me in high school, if this was what I was going to do, I said absolutely not, because I think like most teenagers, you don't want to do what your parents are doing.
Yes.
So my mom was a resource teacher. So working with children with different needs. And my father was director of assessment and also has his PhD in education. So it's like I end up being a mirror of my parents. But the more I was working in this area, the more, like you said, there was a gap. And I kind of took it upon myself. I was like, you know what, this gap needs to be filled. If I don't do it, yes, someone else will do it, but when? And you know what? Children are struggling right now. They've struggled for years. And I'm a person that I always want to help. I always kind of see the odd duck and I want to help them. And so I was like, all right, there's a gap that needs to be filled. Let's do it. And it was a lot of work. It was doing it during COVID, which made things very, very difficult, especially working with children, a lot of restrictions around that. So it actually delayed me a year. So if anyone did their PhD, it's a mental load. So during COVID was a whole other thing, but that's a whole other story.
Yes. Well, too, I think maybe it helped you when your parents were doing it, because it just fascinates me now that there's all these different career choices out there that I wish I would have had like the opportunity to understand it so much more in the high school setting, because they're like, okay, you're done now, go off. And it's like there's so many different avenues that you could go. And so having your parents probably just in that kind of realm, you could kind of see a little bit more what they do. And for those just listening, like I do have dyslexia, and I was in a learning disability class. I never really liked the name of what they chose for that, for extra support. And I always wondered, like, I guess because I was going through it, I never even put two and two together of what kind of support they're actually helping me with in a way. It was just felt like it was like, oh, like, because I got classified as the dumb kid. So go into this class because X, Y, and Z. So I think if I would have had like another version to look out, I'd probably been like, oh, I would love to do this too, because I am such an advocate on getting assessments and just making sure that we really support kids in different levels and like figuring out at the end of the day, what is your strength? And it's okay if you have a weakness. So let's just kind of build a team together to make sure that you are successful in school, because school is hard. So
Exactly. And I think you said it really nicely. Like, everyone has strengths and everyone has weaknesses. Even as adults, we all have weaknesses. But it's identifying what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses and able to really work with the weaknesses so they can then become strengths.
yes.
And when you use a standardized assessment, it kind of just tells you what you, yes and no, like, did you achieve the skill or not? But in fact, we know that learning is a continuum. It's not black and white. And so with my assessment, when we look at learning potential, we do it through actually trying to teach the child a skill. So we get to identify how they learn. Mm-hmm. And then how they learn, even if they're struggling, we can see, which strategies are working better. As an examiner, as a teacher, am I asking the question in a certain way that the child was responding better? Awesome. Mark that down. Or if I use modeling, is that working better than, offering various explanations? So you get an idea of how the child is learning, so you can get a better profile of them as a learner. That leads to more appropriate support.
Yes. I'm so excited that you're here, because I love to spread the word more about it, because I find right now I've been getting a lot of pushback at the school board or school level, because I think we're doing it too young, and I don't think we are. Personally, for someone who's had their own assessment as young as age 6, and now my one kiddo's turning 8, I feel like we're at the right point right now to see the different levels of extra support that we can make sure that we can really like give her in the school district. Because if, for anyone who doesn't know, usually you have to have a written letter if you need extra support, maybe in the examinations. Like I got super distracted in doing my exams, so I got doubled time. So depending on what the exam is, I was given double time to write my exam. I was allowed to go in a separate room, and depending on the exam, they had it written in there to have it like read to me if I choose to, or I can just do it myself. And then when I moved into university, it was neat because you actually had programs to read you the exams. They're probably a little bit more advanced now, but I don't know. I remember this big computer. It was like, I felt like I was going in a spaceship.
But I really like that you touched upon like early intervention, because ask any specialist, early intervention is key. Children, we do have a critical window, and if you can really identify their needs, especially if it's a disorder, for anyone out there, disorders do not get better with time, and they get better with intervention. And so it's really, really important to identify them as early as possible, because that's just the way the brain works when we're young, where you can shape them a lot better when in the early years. If you don't get that support in the early years, you're more likely to struggle in the later years, and it's a lot more difficult to really have long-term success, and in that terms, in terms of behavior, employment, your social life, because language is everywhere, right? It really affects every aspect of your life.
100%. Maybe we can dig in a little bit of really what is development language disorder, DLD, because I know when I met you, I was so fascinated about it, and I learned so many things. So
yeah, DLD is known as the most common disorder no one has ever heard of. So it stands, like you said, for developmental language disorder. So it is a brain-based disorder, which is why it stays with you for life. It affects your speaking, your expressive language, and also your understanding, so your comprehension. So, every child is different, so it could affect them differently. Sometimes it's can affect more on the expressive than the receptive, or the opposite, or, most of the time I would say it affects them both in different variants. But yeah, so that's really what it is. It is often mistaken as other disorders, because when you think of language, if you have trouble getting your words out, you know what you want to say, but it's not coming out the way you want it to. The word order is mixed up, the grammar is off, you can't find that vocabulary word. That's frustrating. And that frustration, if you can't communicate your thoughts and feelings appropriately, that becomes exhausting. You get frustrated, and that's when the behavior can start. And a lot of children can be labeled as having poor behavior when it's actually DLD. And in fact, there was a research out there that shows that when they looked at older children who were labeled, having difficulty with their behavior, 80% of them had low language. So when you think of that, and we think of the schools, where are we putting our resources? Are we putting them for language intervention? In my experience, what we're doing is we're trying to fix the behavior. So we're trying to fix the symptom, but we're not trying to deal with the cause, which is language, which is often language. So that's why a lot of what I do now is actually trying to raise awareness, be like, hey, DLD exists. It is here. And then it can also be masked as dyslexia. And I say that because there's actually a huge comorbidity, relationship between the two. So, dyslexia is a word processing disorder. You have difficulty reading what's in front of you. And DLD is, in terms of reading, is you have difficulty understanding the message of what you're trying to read. So imagine if you have DLD, and dyslexia, you have that difficulty reading the words themselves and then the meaning behind it. Yes. Like that is extremely, I'm trying to imagine if I had both, I would be exhausted. And a lot of children with DLD are exhausted because they are smart. I do want to say there is no relationship between, lack of intelligence and DLD. They're just as intelligent. But oftentimes children with DLD have to work twice as hard because they're trying to understand the meaning behind it, or they're trying to get their words out. So their brain is going and going and going. So at the end of the day, they are exhausted. And often we can label them as, oh, you're being lazy, or you're tired because, oh, you're not trying, but their brain, they're just burned out. So DLD is 7.5% of the world's population. So in a regular classroom, that is 2 children per classroom. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That is a lot for a disorder that not many people know.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and we're going through like that journey for the kids. And so like I think I told you, because when you speak, I'm like, I wonder if my son has this a little bit, because like we've been working a lot with his language and speech therapy and all the things. And we've been having like such a hard time for him to switch from I to, like, he always said me versus I, and the grammar. And then it's just kind of like, oh my goodness. So I've always found this like super fascinating, because I've only ever heard of obviously dyslexia and ADHD and how they correlate.
Yeah. And same with DLD and ADHD, there's a high correlation as well. So it is difficult to really decipher, what is it, and if there are correlations between, ADHD, dyslexia, and DLD, how can we really identify them and then give them the appropriate support? If we just look at them for dyslexia and ADHD because they're more well known, and they're not identified for DLD. And if they have it, all right, you're getting, support for ADHD, you're getting support for your reading. But if you don't get that language support, your intervention can only go so far. So that's why it's really, really important to look at language. Could it be language is what I always try to tell people, is to kind of keep in the back of their mind is, could it be language?
I like that, because I find like, even for me, like processing, and I'm like, because I know I met you last year, and now I'm like, because we have all these different assessments coming through. So I'm like, maybe do I bring, even when I talked to the children's health unit here, they were like, I've never heard of it, like some of them. So I was like, I get really like, let me bring paperwork to you.
Yeah, I mean, they might, like, the people who would know would be speech language pathologists, because that is their job. They are the language experts. I do want to say maybe there is a chance that they know it under a different name.
Okay.
DLD, or developmental language disorder, has only been solidified as a term since 2017. So that's 9 years. So before that, it was known as specific language impairment, or SLI. Yeah, so if you would have heard that, that's about it. They changed a little bit of the criteria of what that means based on there was like catalyse studies, what they called it is all these professionals came together, really solidified, all right, this is what DLD is. But yeah, so the term is really only 9 years old, which is a reason why we need this awareness. So everyone, whether you're a doctor, a parent, a teacher, a community member, a child, what DLD is, to really, when we think 20 years ago, not many people knew what dyslexia was, but now everyone has an idea. They might not know exactly, but they kind of have an idea of what dyslexia is. So we want DLD to have that same amount of awareness. But
yeah, I agree. Because I feel like when just all the conversations I do have, right, with just doing all these different assessments, or just conversations of making sure we have some things in place before we go for the assessments, not once has it ever been brought up to me. So it's usually dyslexia, ADHD, ADD, and anxiety. So it's interesting that it's not kind of brought up in the conversation. So
that's interesting. But now that now it's something you can advocate for. It be like, hey, like, have you ever considered that it could be language? That's to start a conversation. If they never considered it, then, I mean, it could be a start to, you could teach them something.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny because they're always like, what do you have for me today?
I think that shows you're a good parent.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I love, maybe you have some input on what is kind of the age bracket, because I know like there's a lot of conversations, and I know I push back on that, but I would love to hear from you what you can kind of say on when someone, because I know you said early intervention, but what does that look like? Because early intervention can range in so many different ways.
Yes, no, that's a really good fact. So I just want to say I am not a speech language pathologist, so I do not diagnose children. My assessment is more of like risk level. But going back to early intervention, that can mean so many things are different depending on your needs. I would say a rule of thumb for DLD is about age 5. In terms of diagnosing, you can give them intervention if you see they're struggling, but before the age of 5, sometimes it's unclear whether it's a delay, which means that they just need extra help and they will catch up, versus DLD, which will require like more long-term, more intensive intervention. So in terms of DLD diagnosis, and then trying to apply some good intervention strategies around the age of 5. So you're talking school age children, essentially, which reflects my assessment. We start at the age of 5.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's about like just starting to like, I started my daughter, for example, in before like kindergarten. They did a pre-assessment, and then I've just been piling all my documents up. So then we have like a full analysis than just like grade 1 or 2. Like I've been really advocating for us to get like these different like tutors of what they see and all the things in between, so we can get like a really good assessment when we go forward, which we're going for this year. So I'm super excited. Actually, the Métis is helping us. We got a grant for that, so I'm very appreciative of them. So we can
Absolutely.
actually get this going as well. But yeah, no, I'm super excited for us to talk about this because it's a conversation I think that is so important. And that's the one thing that I always advocate for as well, is that no one's stupid, that we're all worthy to be here, of whatever who you look like and your beliefs and all the things. So it's just having that space and that safe space, I think, is really important.
No, exactly. It's kind of with all of my experience, working with children from diverse backgrounds, particularly like multilingual, and then you add the ones who have DLD, seeing them not get the most appropriate support, or the best practices, that's inequality right there. And I was like, that's every child deserves high quality education, whatever that may look like. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because like you said, like, everyone deserves to be seen and to be valued and to be on the same level playing field.
Yes, I agree. We're already halfway through.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So anyone who's just tuning in, welcome to Breaking Norms, Building Dreams. We're live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 in New Orleans. I told you it would go fast. See, I haven't even looked really at the question. But maybe you can talk a little bit about what you do offer at TRICOAST Education, just so that everyone can understand there. And I know you have your books, so I want to make sure we make room for those other ones too.
Perfect. Yes. So after my PhD, when I was like, okay, I have this assessment. Now, what do we do with it? I knew I didn't do this PhD in vain. I wanted to do something to give to others. So we put the assessment on an online platform, and we translated and made sure it was validated in French. So all of our offerings, whatever we do, French and English. And so now with the platform, it allows me to train speech language pathologists and resource teachers on the assessment. So we give them training, live training, and then they can go in and use the assessment with the children or students that they think would benefit from the assessment. And after the assessment, the platform spits out a PDF report suggesting, are they at risk for DLD? How do they learn? What strategies are best? And also qualitative comments that can help guide intervention if that's what's needed. So that's kind of the gist of it on the platform. We also do professional development, so we can work with school districts or school boards throughout an entire school year, so we can help raise awareness for the entire school personnel, and then also work with the people that we train. So like I said, the speech language pathologists and resource teachers, provide them professional development throughout the school year. So that's something else we do. And then we also do workshops. So we can, either on Zoom or in person, we can go in and, tell or discuss developmental language disorder with school personnel. So a lot of it is awareness alongside the assessment piece as well. And yes, the books are part of it as well.
Yeah, please share more information about your books. I knew about your books, and then we drifted away because it was such a crazy 2025. And then when we were going back and forth, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about those books.
Yeah. I mean, the books, like this time last year, the books were not even on the radar for us as a company. We were, we were an assessment company. We were kind of serious. And then it was a person on our team. His name is Robin. He is a wonderful illustrator, as something that he's done in the past. He said, and he's like, you keep saying you want to raise awareness around DLD. what better way than children's books? You know, they're so tangible, they're accessible to everyone. Everyone loves a children's book. So why don't we create books that have characters with different facets of DLD so children can see themselves in a book? And it's just like a fun story. And based on my education experience, we can add some teachings in there that can help children. And so I love these books. We have 2 out, and the third is will probably be out at the end of February. So the first one is called Drew and the Magic Pencil, and the second one is called Lily and the Magic Notebook. So you see there's like this magic theme, and spoiler, the magic is the learning potential. So it's kind of like a hidden message. So each book, the character, so Drew, he has more on the expressive side. So he has to tell a story at a forest festival, but he knows he doesn't get the words out right. So he finds a magic pencil and realizes that, oh, I can draw really well with this magic pencil. Then he realizes, oh, like with my drawings, I think I can get my story out in a way where people can understand me. And this is a way that, you know, it is right for me. So it shows that, you know, we can use drawing, which is something that like a strategy that is used in therapy. We use drawing a lot. And so use those drawings, you know, to build your language skills, but also use this as support. And so Drew gets to tell his story with these drawings, and everyone loves them. And for Lily, she has to plant trees for the forest to grow for years to come. So they are forest creatures. So Drew is a dandelion, Lily is a ladybug.
That's so nice.
Yeah, so there's this little like forest environmental sub-theme that is quietly talked about in the book as well. But Lily has difficulty understanding. So when she is given multiple steps at once, she gets confused and overwhelmed, and she ends up doing the wrong thing and then gets accused of not listening, which is very common for people with DLD. It's like, you weren't listening, but it's like, no, I just was confused. And so Lily is given a magic notebook, and she learns that she can write the steps down in order to help her organize her thoughts. And in conjunction, she learns how to advocate for herself. So, you know, we always say, you know, if you don't understand, just raise up your hand and say, hey, I don't understand. That's a big ask, especially if you have difficulty speaking. So in this book, we actually give you concrete examples on what you can say. So Lily will say, can you repeat that, please? You know, so you know, if a child with DLD is reading this and say, okay, now I know what to say in class if I'm struggling. So all the books, both of them have mantras. So Drew is breathe, wait, take your time. The words will come. You'll be just fine. So even with children who have ADHD, I've had a lot of parents buy this book for children who have ADHD because it helps them regulate, you know, calms them down. It's like, all right, now breathe, wait, you take your time. Okay, now we're good to go. Because we know children can't learn if they're not regulated.
Yeah.
So regulate, self-regulate, and then we can learn. So all these books, they have everything is extremely intentional in these books. And at the end, there's a call to action. I think that's just the educator in me. I'm like, okay, now that we read a book, now let's reinforce it, do an activity. So with Drew, it's like, get your magic pencil and, you know, draw your story and tell that story to your family and friends. They'll love it from the beginning to the end. And then Lily, there's a little magic notebook at the end where you can write or draw the steps or something you'd like to do, like bake cookies or something like that. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I love that how you do have a book to go with it, because I think that helps on like the education, even for parents too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And our books are in English, French, and Spanish as well. So we want to kind of, you know, try to get these books out there in the masses. So because at the end of the day, I want children to be seen in a book. There's really not many books out there that focus on DLD specifically. So this might be the first introduction that children with DLD can have. And even if their child is typically developing in language, it builds empathy. To see like, okay, just because this child is speaking a little differently, it doesn't mean they're weird. It just means maybe they have DLD and they're trying really hard.
Yes. Oh, I like this. And the pictures are stunning. With the
Yeah. That's I mean, that's all Robin. He's wonderful. He really wanted the drawings to be vibrant,
they are.
very attractive. And as we do more books, they become more sophisticated, and there's a
Yeah.
few like things you can see in the background. So if you want to do guided reading with your child, you're asking them questions about the book. There's so much going on in the background that you can discuss to kind of promote literacy and language within, just what can seem like a simple children's book can actually be very, very rich in multiple ways.
I love that. No, it's stunning. Like when I remember when we were first talking and I came across the books, I'm like, oh, I love like the colors and everything about it. Like, I know I want to read it. Amazing. And then it looks like you have some PDF downloads as well on your website too.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's that educator in me. We have parent guides and teacher guides, about 2-pagers, so very manageable, that you can download on our website if you have the book. So we have one for Drew, one for Lily. And so it talks about, how to introduce the topic of developmental language disorder with your child, in a child-friendly way. And then also some questions that you can ask about the book. If you had a friend like Drew, what would you do if they were struggling to get their words out? Just to have a nice conversation around it. So yeah, those are absolutely free to download on our website. And yeah.
I think it turned off when I was sharing the screen. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your books. I'm so excited to actually dig in and read it for myself. And I'm going to share it with some of the individuals that I already work with, because I've been at the Queen Alexander for, it's kind of crazy to think, but almost 8 years, to be honest, with both kids. So I always like to share things that I've learned along the way. So I'm excited to kind of like pass along the books too with them as well. And anyone listening, go take a look for sure.
Yeah, they're on Amazon, or if you can order them at your local bookstore as well.
Amazing. I know you have a great team behind you as well. Did you want to share a little bit about your team?
Yes. I always get smiles when I say this, but TRICOAST Education is a father-daughter duo. It was actually my dad who came up with the concept of, hey, let's put our heads together and start a business. I never thought I'd ever end up being in business. So he kind of gave me that push and the idea of, let's put the assessment on a platform and make it easy for the users. And so we work really, really well together, I think, because we have similar experiences. And so that's been really, really enriching as well. And he's worked in the school system as well and for international committees as well. So he has a lot of experience that really helps me, with whoever I'm talking to, whether it's a school administrator or a government body. And he really helps me out with that. And he's bilingual as well. He's from Quebec. And Robin, he's kind of a multimedia design expert. He is kind of he designed our logo last year. So everything in our logo is extremely intentional, with the little speech bubble to the light beacon, everything, or kind of ocean, a TRICOAST. When you think, well, what the heck is TRICOAST? TRICOAST Canada, we have 3 coasts. We have East, West, and North.
Yes.
And the reason behind it, behind the name, is that, when we think of Canada, we like to consider ourselves as inclusive, welcoming, we take care of each other. And so those are the values that we like to, that we have are very, very dear to our heart at TRICOAST. And that we like to, coast to coast to coast, TRICOAST. And so whenever we have anyone who come on board for TRICOAST, whether it's just a quick internship or an employee, we always ask about their values, because we want people who work with us to have the same values as us. Because we know, when we are passionate and care about the same things, we know that we'll work together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. It's interesting. When I went to school, I couldn't learn French for the life of me. Like, I tried so hard to learn it and I couldn't compute any of the language. So I know here, like over in Ontario, like it's usually like, yes, learn French kind of push. But here I feel like it's so a different, like we were supposed to learn it, but it's a little bit more of a different dynamic. But do you see that that's also a struggle with language?
Yeah. Usually, if you are like typically developing a language, you can learn a second language. Of course, we all know that earlier you learn a second language, the better. It is hard to learn languages when you get older, especially as an adult. But if you are struggling with language, and dyslexia is part of that as well, because if you have a difficulty trying to read in your first language, you're going to struggle in your second language as well. So that just makes language learning more difficult. I think a big part of it is also exposure. For me, I was extremely lucky. My father's French, my mother is Anglophone. So okay. I always speak and always spoke French with him, and always English with my mom. And I grew up in a French school because I lived in a more English community. So I was very much exposed to both every single day, which helped me from, the very beginning. Especially, in more Anglophone communities, if you're learning French, you're really only learning it in isolation in that school context.
Yeah.
So, the scenarios and the language you're using is probably more academic anyway. Is it really relevant to, you go out with your friends or go out in the community? You're like, oh, wait, the French that I'm learning at school is a bit different than everyday language. And so that is a struggle when you're not exposed to the language in various contexts. So that itself will make it more difficult.
Yeah. And even too, like, we only have one French immersion school here, which is probably not normal when you go towards Ontario, Quebec.
Yeah. And in New Brunswick, it's, we're the only official bilingual province. And so it is an expectation that, not an expectation, I shouldn't say that, but I would say a large majority of students are in French immersion. I was in full hardcore French. There's no English. We were not allowed to speak English at all.
Wow. Yes. Yeah, it's so funny to look at different provinces and how that's kind of so dynamic and different in different ways. Like, and even to here, like, you're not even guaranteed to get in because of how much of a wait list it is. So, and yeah, it's just interesting to see like the different provinces and how it's all slightly different.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost nearing time. I really want to ask, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of like two different things. I think on more the DLD education assessment side, I would hope that every single child, regardless of your background or language, you can come to school and get appropriate support as early as possible. So if I can help with that in whether big or small way, who knows where TRICOAST is going to go in the next few years. But if I can make a difference in that, then that would be the most wonderful thing. On the more business side of things, being in ed tech, there are so few women in ed tech entrepreneurs. I think we're like 7% or something. It's a very low number. So maybe not right now, but I feel in a few years, I might feel a responsibility to kind of, help, guide or offer advice to other women entrepreneurs who want to be in this space. But yeah, to kind of be a part of this space is something I'm very proud of, and continue to ride that wave of ed tech, because amazing things are happening in that space.
Yes, I agree. I feel like Because even just for where we have come, how far we've come a great deal. So it's nice to see like your organization opening up and talking about different levels. And we have Dyslexia Canada, for example. So it's just kind of like, I'm so excited to finally like see these pieces kind of come together. And like, I can see you guys collaborating, say, with Dyslexia Canada and all these other great non-for-profits across Canada and some in the States that I probably don't know of.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a goal, right? It's like we're stronger together. And I
Yeah.
know in terms of nonprofits for DLD, there's an international organization called Rattled, so raising awareness for developmental language disorder. So if you go to rattled.org, so radld.org, there's that international committee, but in Canada, we have one as well. And in the States, there's one as well. So different countries kind of have their own, and, it is not for profit. And I know for Canada, we meet once a month. And so, so anyway, it is open to anyone who wants to learn more or has resources to share. And so, so it's starting. You have to start somewhere, but we're very new. So hopefully it's going to grow. And I think with partnerships with different organizations, we'll certainly help that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for you and your whole team and your dad. I love that you guys are working together.
Yeah, we get that a lot. But it's funny because we have the same last name. So we always have to say father, daughter, like not married.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness. Any last minute, like where everyone can find you? I know we have your website here, but maybe we can regroup on where they can find you. Any last minute thoughts before we kind of wrap up today?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, part of what we do is raise awareness. So even on our socials, we're still raising awareness. We're on Instagram, so look up TRICOAST Education, Facebook, same thing, LinkedIn. We also have a newsletter that, we get 4 times a year, but it's packed with good information and free resources. So whether you're a clinician, speech language pathologist, teacher, or parent, there is something for you. So we encourage you to go on the website and sign up for the newsletter. It should be a little pop-up. And just be part of the TRICOAST community. There's so many good things coming up, like our 3rd book is going to come out, and our 3rd character, Sammy Salmon, is going to be the hero of that story. So if you're interested in learning when that's going to come out, you certainly follow us on our socials. It's going to be there. And we still try to give tidbits and little different campaigns on how to raise awareness. Not only what we're doing on the daily, but we're still trying to raise awareness on our socials as well.
Love it. And I know, Heidi, you've been like messaging us. Thank you for listening. My brain being back into the groove of things only wants to like focus on the conversation. Tech issues today. My brain's like even more like, can't pivot.
It's all good. You did great.
Well, I'm so excited that you came on the show today and just shared so much about who you are and on development language disorders, because I think that's something like such a passion of mine to kind of have this as an open field so we can have more conversations on dyslexia, ADHD. And when I found out about DLD, I was like, yes, you're coming on the show.
No,
so
exactly.
Right here.
I just wanted to say thank you. And it was so nice speaking to you before and getting to know you, as a learner and your struggles and your, life as a student and how you are overcoming your difficulties as well. So it's nice to know that, you truly understand the need for something like this. So thanks for your empathy and understanding.
Yeah, thank you. And then any parent out there listening, just say, question if your kids are feeling like they're struggling, just get curious and start asking curious questions and ask why. And sometimes you can just Google things and you find great programs like ANTS, a website, and all of these things. There's a community out there. I know there's so many Facebook groups, but always try to dig a little bit deeper when sometimes you get a pushback on the school boards, school districts, because they're interesting sometimes. We have some ways to go. I'll leave it at that. But with that, thank you so much for coming on the show and all our listeners. Please tune in to Breaking Norms, Building Dreams next week. And a big thank you to United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal, can't even talk right now, UFO Paranormal Radio Network. And with that, everyone, remember your journey is unique and your worth is unquestionable. Thank you.